Now, why it takes too much time to Iran to attack? Because they were talking about they're gonna attack Israel, but they didn't do it so far. And we are witnessing that there are some rumors that behind the scene there are some negotiations going on between Iran and the United States. And we are witnessing that the United States is sending more weapons to the Middle East. That it's how do you see this? Do you think at the end of the day Iran would attack Israel, or they're not going to do that?
First of all, remember that in April, it took almost 2 weeks to Iran before it responded to the attack on the consulate in Damascus. So, meaning that Iran will not, they are not hip shooters. They are not hip shooters. They think, they strategize, they plan carefully prior to attacking. And we have to understand why. Because Iran, and especially with all the warmongers that you have in the United States and is Israel and all that, the willingness in Israel from the political elite to extend the war because they see, as they have always done. By the way, it's not new. It is since the early 50s. Israel is trying desperately to drag the US into a regional war in the Middle East. So we are exactly in this kind of dynamics, and Iran knows it perfectly, meaning that Iran knows that there is this threat on the one hand. On the other hand, remember that Iran reacted in April not to destroy Israel, but in fact, they did a very calibrated show of force. The idea was, it was probably more a message than a military operation, if you want, because the idea was to tell the Israelis, if uh, if you attack us, we have the ability to respond. And in fact, they did that extremely wisely by sending three or even four, depending how you count, three waves of flying objects. If you want, the first wave of drones that was designed at exhausting the Iron Dome capabilities. Then a wave of cruise missiles that was aimed at exhausting the David Sling capabilities of Israel. And then you had a missile wave that that whose purpose was to deplete the Israel abilities of using their Arrow 1 and 3 missiles, that these are anti-ballistic missiles. And once they depleted that, and that's very obvious when you see the movies of what happened that day, you could say that after Israeli fired all these anti-missile missiles, then the last wave, and that's part of the third wave, in fact, but these were probably different missiles. But you had just a couple of those very sophisticated missiles who came in a absolutely blank sky where you had absolutely no Israeli missiles, and they struck the desired objectives. So, meaning that the Iranians were able to show to the Israelis and to the world that they are able to strike Israel, bypassing or exhausting its air defense capabilities without killing a single person. That's very important. And that means that they have the asset to do it, despite the presence of US warships and so on and so forth. So, so the the Iranian reaction in April was essentially of dissuasive nature. It was deterrent, basically. And my view is that if Iran wants to respond now, they will probably do the same, but at a higher level. They may strike more objectives, but again, they want to avoid to trigger a regional war. They want to prevent any incentive or giving any incentive to the US to be more involved into the conflict, and they want to they probably, I mean, I'm not in the Iranian general staff, so I don't know, but my feeling is that they will do the same kind of thinking, but at a higher level, avoiding civilian casualties, showing a more powerful message, but they need to do it because the problem with Israel is that, as I said, Israel, since the early 50s, is trying to have the US and the West involved militarily in the Middle East and having a permanent military presence in the Middle East. So definitely, if Iran doesn't respond, Israel will continue provocations, and we see. By the way, if you read what the Israeli government says about the Palestine and all that, you will see that it's a government that is at the border of rationale. I mean, it's beyond rationale. In fact, it is almost irrational, and it's very difficult to cope with the irrational. You have to strike very strong to deter an irrational. If it's a rational person, they will understand. If they are intelligent enough, they will understand what's going on, and they will probably stop provocation. But in Israel, it's not the case. We have an irrational, uh, probably very much misguided leadership, and that explains, by the way, the question you had about the problem, the dissent within the government between Yoav Gallant and the Benjamin Netanyahu leadership, including these extremists like Ben Gvir and Bezalel um, um, Smotrich. So we have here a different approach, but basically the Iranian consider that the Israeli are irrational. Therefore, they have to respond. They have to respond and strong. But the problem is that the window is extremely narrow because if you don't respond strong enough, Israel will not feel deterred, and if you respond too strong, you may trigger a conflict. And that's why the Iranians are, in fact, in a very, very difficult situation. They are on a very narrow path, and they have to calibrate their strategy in a way that is uh, exactly to the point, but not beyond the point. You see, and that's